All right. Well, welcome to our podcast. We have a really fun guest today. We have Becky Wertz, who is a certified therapeutic harp practitioner, right? As well
Yes.
as a national board certified health and wellness coach. Thanks for coming on with us, Becky.
Yeah, you bet. It's exciting. It's good to see you guys again.
It is. It is. So Becky went through our course. When was that? Was that
I think it was
last year?
2020.
Okay.
Yeah.
Years ago.
Very memorable.
Yes.
Both you being in class and the year 2020.
Yeah, exactly. That was a good year to do some studying.
It was.
I remember when you were in our course, we got little pieces of, hearing about your health journey, just in our interactions and the things we were talking about in class. And it always interested me. Like, I wanted to know a little more about your health journey and some of the pearls you've uncovered, some of the things maybe you're still working on. I think all that stuff is it's stuff we're all trying to figure out. So I thought this would be a fun conversation just to talk about some of the things that have helped you heal and helped you grow as a person, and really anything that you want to talk about today. So you mind just telling us about yourself a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest in Oregon, and then I moved to Colorado, and I then moved to like Philly and then Pittsburgh, and I was a military spouse, so we just ended up like a lot of places across the country, which was really nice. And then my husband retired last year, and retired from the Coast Guard, I should say, not like retired, like he still works, because we're still in our 40s, we still have a ways to go. But yeah, so then we decided to make Colorado Springs our home. Again, he grew up in Utah, so we like the West, we like the mountains, the East Coast. It was great. We love the Boston area, but we're happy here. And I'm just getting my coaching business set up finally here. I had another job before in a harp store as a harp technician and a harp specialist, and I would fix the harps and everything harp, basically. And that took up a lot of my free time, so I couldn't pursue the coaching like I wanted to. But now that I'm here, I have the time that I can dedicate it to coaching and like getting it up, going, and everything. But growing up, I suffered a lot of like childhood trauma and abuse. And of course, as we know, like that really can contribute to chronic pain later in the years. I sought counseling, I sought therapy. I had a couple hospitalizations actually, and a couple times in treatment centers, which were all very beneficial. I worked with psychiatrists and psychologists, and I also started having physical symptoms of like IBS. Was the very first, and migraines were the very first big thing, health challenges that I came to face in, I would say, teenage years to early 20s. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with a gastroenterologist, trying to figure out what, all the procedures, those were fun. Trying to figure out what it is. And I think back then, it was just getting on the horizon, things like IBS and these digestive disorders were just coming around and being figured out. And so a lot of doctors' offices, they didn't know how to treat it. So they would, send me off with a, what's that fiber pill, take more fiber, basically. Well, that made my symptoms a lot worse and didn't help whatsoever. So after finding a combination balance of, I started experimenting with my diet and figuring out what were my triggers. And, there's a lot of research, there's a lot of diets, there's a lot of all that information, and to be really in tune with yourself and to do process of elimination it requires a lot of time and patience and effort. And so I eventually figured out that a gluten-free, like low FODMAP diet worked really well for my IBS symptoms. Since then, I have had my daughter. I had a lot of trouble getting pregnant. I had a lot of miscarriages. I didn't understand why at the time. So I went on a super, super restrictive diet called the autoimmune protocol diet. And I would say parts of it triggered my IBS more because I was eating those low FODMAP foods and not realizing it. But in general, I did really good on it, except for the, the digestive issues that would occasionally come up from that. But it was just a very cleansing diet, but it was very restrictive and hard to follow. But I managed to get pregnant on that. I followed it for, let's see, maybe 6 months, and finally was able to get pregnant. And when I was pregnant, I was able to eat differently. I'm not sure why. The body just changes hormonally. And so it was really nice because I was able to bring in back some carbs and different things like rice. And especially in the early trimester, it was so necessary to have something very bland, to eat and everything. So I was able to do that. And by the end of it, I was able to have like potatoes and some dairy and things like that. And I did pretty fine on that. So I had my daughter and I had a very traumatic birth, as if I hadn't gone through enough already. So I had something called a retained placenta, and sorry if this like grosses you out or anything, but I basically hemorrhaged and I lost consciousness after giving birth. So it was like 30 hours of labor, a lot of back labor. And I did get a, what do you call those, epidural, but it would only work halfway. And so they were trying to figure out like how to move me to get it to work on the other side. And it was just, that was fun. But anyway, she was healthy. That's the important thing, right? But when I lost consciousness, it sure scared my husband. And I just remember being like, I just had no control over my body, but I was still there. And so I saw everybody like freaking out in the, the operating room or whatever, delivery room. And then, they had me come to, I think they just give you something bad to smell or whatever. And they were really concerned with my blood loss. So I was okay, but they did a very painful and traumatic procedure trying to get the rest of the placenta. And it was something I had to be in therapy for afterwards, and not just like mental, like, like emotional therapy, but I actually had to do like physical pelvic therapy and different things like that because they weren't able to extract it manually. I had to have emergency surgery. So I went ahead, had that surgery. That was honestly the best part of the whole experience because you get to be knocked out, and I just felt like I was going to be taken care of. I wasn't too worried. I think the scary part was over. I knew my daughter was healthy. I wanted to be around for her. I wasn't too worried about myself at that point. However, days later, as I was being monitored in the hospital, my blood counts weren't looking so good. And I was so weak. And the doctors were really concerned. And so I actually had 2 blood transfusions. And yeah, that was a big decision. Like, you never think about that day where you're like, oh, here it is, that day where, you have to take that risk and get a blood transfusion. And at that point, it was like, I didn't really have a choice. It was that, or, the doctor was basically saying, we're not sure you're going to get better. It was like a danger zone, and it was like a wake-up call. And it almost felt like a close death, experience. And I was in the hospital for, I think, like 5 days. being monitored and everything. Meanwhile, the woman's body is going through a lot of hormonal withdrawals and changes after having the pregnancy. So there was a lot of like anxiety and hot flashes and shivering and all different kinds of weird things that I don't think I was ever told about, with delivery and pregnancy. So, and I kind of wish that the nurses were a little bit more like, that's normal. But they didn't really say anything. So that was hard. So yeah, it was a very hard experience, and you can still hear in my voice, like it's shaky because like I don't really talk about it often. So when I think about it and I relive it, I'm like, holy crap, I really did go through a lot. On top of having a new baby and then dealing with just the life changes that brings and the stresses and the waking up 3 times a night type of thing. So I was very fortunate though. I had my mother-in-law from Thailand, and she came and she was with us for 2 years, and it was a godsend. Truly, I don't know if I could have made that recovery without her help. We would always still take the night shift because she was in her 60s and I felt bad. I didn't want her getting up in the middle of the night, but it allowed me to go back to work and kind of assume that structure that I felt I had before all of this happened. And it really did help me. So again, I talked about, I went to see somebody who did that pelvic therapy with me. And then I did the cognitive behavioral therapy. And 6 months postpartum, I started noticing intrusive thoughts. And I didn't know that's what they were called. It was very disturbing. Unfortunately, because of the sexual abuse I had suffered as a child, the intrusive thoughts were actually coming in a sexual form. And it was so highly uncomfortable. And it made me pretty much like freak out. And I was really scared. Like I didn't want to tell my husband. I was having these thoughts just come to me, like when I was changing her diaper or bathing her. It was just truly horrifying. Like I thought, I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm turning into, like the worst you could possibly imagine, right? Someone having these thoughts and things. So I didn't understand it, but my therapist at the time worked with me. And she said, if you ever have any thoughts that come into your, mind about harming yourself or harming your baby, please feel free that this is a safe space to bring it up. And she said that in the beginning of our counseling. And I thought to myself, oh, I don't have any thoughts like that. I'll be fine. 6 months postpartum, it coordinated with the return of my cycle, actually. So some kind of hormonal shift, something happened there. And we were able to piece it together. And I was able to figure out that it was part of OCD. A lot of people call it pure O, or just the obsessive part of OCD. So it's not like washing your hands, like that is sort of like the action part, but like more of the thought process. And I didn't realize that existed out there. And so the more research I did and the more people I found in stories like online, and just knowing that this is a thing, and it isn't, like it's a medical condition. It wasn't me personally. I was having like those thoughts about my daughter, like they were triggered. And so it made a lot of sense. I was able to educate myself, and I started to not be afraid of the thoughts. And my therapist used something called exposure therapy. So during exposure therapy, when I would have those thoughts, I was to continue doing what I was doing with my baby. So holding her or changing her diaper or bathing her, to kind of show myself that these thoughts were just thoughts, and I was still a good mom, and I could still do these behaviors without acting on those intrusive thoughts coming in. So these intrusive thoughts can take many forms, like, just horrific images. And a lot of women go through this postpartum, and it's not really widely talked about. So I made a couple videos on my YouTube channel about it because I just felt so alone during that time and so scared. So it was important to me to talk about it and to show that this can happen, you know, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's who you are, and it can be treated. So that has been a lot of my journey. Since then, I know this is a long story, right? Since then, I have been exploring the MTHFR gene mutation that is behind a lot of the miscarriages, the migraines, and the autoimmune disease Sjogren's that I was also diagnosed with a couple years ago. So Sjogren's is all about like dry everything, dry skin, dry, just all your glands, everything is like kind of like dried up. Since discovering the MTHFR gene mutation and working with some supplements, I was able to bring in a form of methylated B12. As soon as I was able to do that, it was like my body came back online, and it was like my lungs and even my ears, like inside my ears, like it was painful, but it was like it was getting back up to speed of where it should have been before. And since then, I've been feeling a lot better. The fatigue isn't as bad, but I still need to explore it with either a naturopath or a geneticist and get some more information. But it's all about being that fun guinea pig phase and working with your doctors and everything. And I very much still am on medication. The Sjogren's and the MTHFR gene mutation, I've always struggled a lot with the depression, and it's not healthy for me to not be on something. So it's that serious of a difference. So I have always, I've tried both, like natural and also prescription. And I guess it was good for me not to have a judgment about either or, and just to figure out what's going to work for you. So that's kind of where I am.
Like a recurring theme that I hear a lot from you is just the curiosity. Like it tends to, I just hear that you've left no stone unturned when it comes to some of these health challenges. And it's hard it's hard when you face something that's kind of unknown, that's hitting you out of nowhere. It's hard to know how to navigate that, what direction to go in. And I hear that you just have a curiosity that leads you to different things that work for you, from the FODMAP diet to, finding help when you need it with the therapist to, just seeking things out that work for you. And I think it's hard whenever you face something that's kind of a mystery with your health. It's hard to know what to do about that. And there's definitely some parallels that stand out to me with my own health journey. I've had some of the gut issues and some of that autoimmune myself, and I know it can really be overwhelming because there's not a lot of answers out there in the mainstream, and sometimes you have to dive deep and kind of figure out your own path towards it. So, I don't know. It's just neat hearing your own kind of the path that you've chosen isn't the easy one. It's not like your standard mainstream route to health, but you've kind of carved that out for yourself and found a way to to pursue something that's a little bit different for yourself that worked for you.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention that while I was experiencing a lot of this chronic pain, I was worried about my future and employment and everything. And so that's when I started to research about getting help with chronic pain. And I found TCC. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is perfect. It's something I can do. And also it helps me at the same time. And I can't even tell you like how much what I have learned in that program was just, even if I wasn't going to use it as an employment opportunity or, a way to make money in the future or whatever, the techniques that I learned in that class were life-changing. And I soaked it up like a sponge. And then I really discovered a passion for like neuroscience and, just getting in there, and it's like body hacks and brain hacks and just like, there's a lot of stuff out there like I had no clue about, and just fascinated with how the brain works and the pain map and all of that. So the logical part that I love, I love, learning. And so when I was able to take a lot of that and apply it, it totally changed how I managed and dealt with my pain.
I loved that piece you were talking about earlier. And this is very interesting. I think Paul and I can relate to that sponge feeling, right? Soaking up all this stuff. But I love the depth that you've been showing us, Becky, with your journey and the connection to rewiring your brain. When you were talking about those intrusive thoughts, I couldn't help but think about how neuroplasticity was involved there with what you were doing, right? When you were talking about, I just kept doing what I was doing with my baby girl, reinforcing that I'm a good mom, doesn't matter what these thoughts are.
Right.
And Paul mentioned this too, the depth of your journey, through AIP and low FODMAP and, all the things you've tried. One thing really, really piques my interest though, because I know this is a huge interest of yours. I'm wondering if you'd tell us a little more about how the harp fits into your journey.
Sure. So as a child, I would say at 5, it was evident to my parents that I had musical ability. And I actually started out on the accordion, which, as I think about it, I'm like, I don't know if that would have been my first choice personally, but that's what became available to me. And that's what my parents chose. So I did a lot. I did competitions. I even got a scholarship, music scholarship, but then I really didn't want to pursue the accordion. It didn't feel like the right instrument for me, and what I wanted to do. And so while I was at college, I was on my way to symphonic band because I also played the clarinet, and somebody was playing the harp in one of the practice rooms, and I just would sit outside and listen. And then one day I was able to catch a girl come out, and I said, "Hey, do you have to be a harp major in order to take, like a beginning harp class?" She's like, no, you don't. You can just sign up. And I'm like, oh, doing that next semester. So I did that and absolutely fell in love with it. I got to play on one of those, just gold harps, that they had there at the college. And it was just amazing. And I started composing actually, and just really going with it. But then, I know that it's an expensive instrument. So here I am, in my young 20s going, how am I going to afford, a $50,000 harp, or something like that. So I didn't touch it for a while. And some legal, I forgot to bring up the whole legal thing. So I pressed charges against the perpetrator for the abuse that I went through. Not only for myself, but for another family member, because I started noticing behaviors and it had to be stopped. So I actually went to a DA and went through a whole trial and testified and everything. It was extremely hard in front of a jury, all of that. It's so much I could go into about that, maybe on another podcast, but he was found guilty and served 11 years. So that's been taken care of and everything. But it was very hard. It was so stressful. But where was I going with that? Oh, so I wanted to go with a legal career for a while because I was going through these legal issues and I really wanted to understand it. So that's where my paralegal background came in. So I did that for a while and I really missed that connection to my music. And to be honest, it was really hard to bring that connection back in, because it reminded me so much of my childhood, and a lot of healing had to be done there. And I just remember how much I loved the harp and how much I felt healed while playing it. Just not only did it like, benefit everybody else, but in a selfish way, I wanted it for myself. It's against your body. The soundboard is like against your body, and that vibration is going into your chakra system, basically. And how could that not be healing? You can even like play around with different tones and modes of music that I learned about. So I decided to get back into it. So that's when I went into the International Harp Therapy Program, IHTP, and that's run by Christina Turin. And it's still available. I mean, I think she still does it online now, but it was a good like 2 years, of studying, of recording, a lot of recordings. And then I had to do a hospital like internship where I played for like 80 hours, which was so great. I loved playing for other people, and just that ability to really like create that, like, as Christina Turin puts it, cradle of sound for somebody to heal. And there was just so much to learn there, and learning about people having their own resonant tone, which you can kind of figure out with the sound of their voice. So it's very fascinating. And I just really became interested in sound healing. And I can't remember the guy who did it, but he does the vibration on these metallic plates, and there's sand. And when there's certain notes played, they actually take a geometric like form. And yeah, I mean, like there's a science to this, there's a math to this. And I think we're just touching on it right now about how sound can heal and vibration. And so not only do I use the harp, but I actually really am into like binaural beats and, sound therapy that way. The Hertz, listening at, they've got so many free things out there, especially on YouTube. Just such great things to listen to and use. And I've been able to actually successfully listen to a couple and reduce migraine pain. So the fact that worked was huge.
It's super interesting that we run just as an aside, we do a monthly book club for coaches. And the last book we did is Norman Doidge's The Brain's Way of Healing. And he has a chapter in there on sound. So yeah, super fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
And how did it connect? So you talked about your, kind of that hard spot of, that music being connected to your childhood, but how healing it was. Is that something that you use ongoing, or, what really kind of was that tipping point where you were getting benefit out of music as opposed to it being a reminder?
Yes. Yeah, it took a while. Like I would say, maybe I would just start out once or twice a year, and it would have to be a different instrument than the accordion. There's stuff attached to that instrument, and just the reminders of childhood. It was too strong. So the fact that I could use the harp as a fresh, brand new instrument was very helpful. And so I just kind of took it slow, and suddenly just, after doing the corporate life, and you think, okay, I did it. I did what I was supposed to do out there, and what everybody tells you, get a good job, do all that. Once I did all that and realized, I'm not sure this is what I want to do. I miss playing. I miss that connection to music. That's what really drove me. And not only that, but during that time of returning to the music, I would say, just like in a spiritual sense, I felt like I was waking up more too. So it was really nice. I would play, and I would play freely at the harp. Whatever pain needed to come out, I would play pain. And, if it didn't sound good or whatever, I just didn't care about that. I really needed to not worry about being recorded or listened to by other people. I needed to be alone with the harp and playing whatever came out. And pretty soon, like I started just composing some songs that came from that. And then, of course, I would go back to technique and doing this, the standard like practice, just so that I could build upon my skill. And I took lessons as well, because it was very important for me to connect with another harp teacher and get their perspective. I really like to go in depth, as Paul said. Like, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to go in and I'm going to really do it. So I was able to learn a couple more techniques of playing. For example, it's kind of a silly one, but if you just play the white strings on the harp, it's like a pentatonic scale on a piano where you play all black keys. So it sounds really pretty. You can't make a mistake. Everything sounds good together. So if you just want to play freely and sound good and not worry about reading music, you don't have to read music to know how to do that. So I love that about the harp. It fits so many people in their musical abilities and interests and their skill level. So,
and what a confidence builder, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking I could get on there and play those.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely. I've had my brother-in-law go, and he's like a truck driver. I mean, it's just like, I said, no, I want you to try this. I'm so passionate about, people coming up and trying it and their connection with the harp, because there's just something so magical and healing about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, as you were talking about that, I just picture you almost transforming your trauma and your pain into something beautiful through music. Like, it's kind of that transference of I take that internal pain that I'm feeling and turn it into something beautiful. And that I think we can do that in a lot of ways, and it's just fun to hear how you've done that with music specifically.
Yeah. Is that not like the purpose of our lives, right? Taking those hard things and the lemons and turning it into lemonade. It's a beautiful story. I love seeing it in other people too, when it comes out and it if they're suffering from cancer or something and they've taken on the harp, or maybe an elderly person in a home, we're able to like put the harp on their lap and they're able to strum it and use their skills with their hands. And it helps in all different kinds of ways. It really does. There is something I want to do. There's even more that I want to do with it healing wise. So there's actually a way to hook up your harp into a chair that vibrates. And you are able to play lower notes and feel them in the lower part of the body, and the higher notes and feel them in the higher part of the body. And it's called vibroacoustic harp therapy. It's something I want to get certified in. And unfortunately, I wish I could do it online, but it's one of those that you have to be in person kind of thing. And it requires a bigger harp. So this one's a smaller harp, and I'm getting a bigger harp coming in December. I'm so excited. I've waited so long, and it's called a pedal harp, and it just gives you a bigger range and bigger sound, so you can feel the vibration more. And certain patients who have gone through this treatment, let's say if they have like frozen shoulder or muscles or things like that, the vibration like works through it and breaks it apart, and they're able to like smile again or move their arm again. It can also like heal you on like an emotional level, bringing up things and everything. So that training helps you with all of that. And it's something I'm really excited about doing.
That's super interesting. I know I have heard, that trauma is stored in different places in the body, right? So that seems like quite a modality to work even with trauma. What immediately came to my mind when you were talking, Becky, was people that are paralyzed in, either paraplegic or quadriplegic. But then you and I was going to ask the question about what, who would this be tailored for? But you kind of talked about that. Are there other conditions that this type of therapy is good for?
Yeah, I mean, there's even a mode you can play in that helps with constipation. So, I mean, there's just so many things, there's just to feel more grounded. You could just use it on a basic level for that. Maybe it's whatever it needs to do. Do you know what I mean? It kind of just knows where to go and what to do. And if there's something there to be released, that's going to come up. And then to help the person, the client through it, and with continued sessions. And then I think like some of them are only, you only need to do a certain amount of sessions and then they're good, so it doesn't have to be like continuously ongoing, but yeah.
Really cool, like an adaptogen, right? I'm thinking
Yes.
about in the herbal world, you've got adaptogens that whatever, they either raise or lower or...
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And of course, if something is too painful, obviously we don't, keep, let me play in this horrible note that you just can't stand hearing. That's another thing about harp therapies too, is in the hospitals when we play, there's constant beeping of monitors and things. And can you imagine me playing in a song that was like against that, like, so you're trained how to play with the beeps and like bring it into your music and even use it rhythmically. And it just kind of fades into the background. So it's just, it's such an art. It's such an art. And there's just so much you can do with it. I feel like it's endless, really. So.
It's something that like I've come into, I guess, kind of hit me recently. I just became a dad about a year ago.
Oh, that's right. And congratulations.
Thank you. And, you talking about how your parents saw this musical gift in you early on. It really, like, I feel like music is something that we're almost born with. My son, even though he's only a year old, I mean, he's been dancing to music for months now. And I feel like we're kind of born with this. It's almost like a spiritual connection to music that's hard to explain or really understand, but it's in us from I think from the time we're born. We're just born with this connection to music for some reason. And kind of that connection with what you were talking about with the healing end of it. I think there's a lot we don't even understand with it because it goes so deep into who we are as human beings.
Yeah, absolutely. Sound as the basis of creation, of energy and matter. So it's fun to learn. And I love bringing the esoteric, the spiritual stuff along with the scientific stuff and putting that together, because I feel like they're just, either or. And I feel like there's a healing that needs to happen between these two and an understanding. And if we did, it wouldn't be so like out there, and then I think also we would embrace more, again, light and sound technologies for healing. For instance, like red light therapy, I'm looking into that recently. So that's interesting. And we'll talk about how red light is healing, especially for the epidermis of the skin. And, so there's so much to explore out there with light and sound, and, we just don't have to just rely on pills and therapy. There's so many things, so many healing modalities.
And you have definitely leaned into that space.
Yeah.
Right? Not relying on pills and things, but really exploring, like, what are the boundaries of these modalities?
Yeah. I've tried to remain that like neutral judgment. And I know people have taken medications and it hasn't worked for them. Trust me, I've been there. I've taken a couple that I'm like, oh no, but it's all about exploring what works. And again, these things exist because all of us are different and our biologies are different, everybody's going to react differently to different things. So it's all about just not giving up and keep trying. And, even being open again to repetitive messages that are coming through to your like own guidance. Like, maybe I should try that again. I didn't really like it the first time, but maybe it's because I didn't give it a long enough, trial period or something like that. Or maybe it was the wrong tone or the wrong time in life. You never know. So it's all about being open. And when you're in pain and when you're not feeling good, it's like, what do you have to lose? Oh, gee, this could make me feel better. Like, I'm going to try that. And pain is motivating, so I definitely feel like that has been a motivator behind all of this, all of the training, all of the perseverance and, just the desire to help people in pain too, because if they're in pain, I'm in pain, so it's not fun.
And that's that transformation we were talking about. You're taking something difficult and you're transforming it into what it really should be, which I think pain should be motivation. I think that's its purpose, right? Is to motivate us to kind of look deep when it comes to something chronic and say, what's wrong here? What do I need to do in order to get back to wellness, right? My body is telling me that something's wrong here. And,
Exactly.
And I need to do something. I need to act on that. And that's the beauty of coaching, is that, like you said, when they're hurting, we feel that in the form of empathy. And it's that, I think that's a reminder when we're coaching people that, pain doesn't have to be this scary thing that it's hard to know how to coach somebody on. It's really, at its core, it can be that that motivator to look a little bit deeper in who that person is and what their values are and what's out of line with that. And I think when you approach it from that standpoint, a lot of things become more clear, and you're able to, much like you've done, find a path to healing that works for you.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
And I think there's two pieces to that, right? Paul, you were talking about when you were coaching someone, and Becky, you really espoused that open mindset, right? So I think in the coaching world, that's on both sides of the equation, right? The coach needs to remain very open-minded when working with the client, and once again, the client. And maybe that, one of those forms that takes is a suggestion by the coach. I'm not saying that you cannot coach someone that's not open-minded, right? But there's a benefit to both sides of the coaching relationship, to that open-mindedness.
Yeah. And that hearing you talk about that just reminded me so much of like how much coaching I wasn't even expecting to help me. And it's like reciprocal. It's like a combined dance, like that we learned about, like both of us healing at the same time. And I guess, the player of the music and the listener of the music, it's kind of the same thing too. Yeah.
There's benefit to both.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thanks. So if you guys want to hear, let me know.
Please.
I can play a little, but I don't know if you guys.
Of course. Yes.
Okay. Yes. All right. Have to put it in the right key. Just a little short piece for you.
You weren't going to stop there. That was amazing.
Yeah. Beautiful.
If I keep going, I might put everybody to sleep. So
It's really soothing.
It really is. I always thought when a patient went to fall asleep, it was like my biggest compliment. Try to get that back behind me there, but yeah, so I have some videos on YouTube for people to listen. And I try to pair it with like nice imagery if the person needs to watch it, but if it's just listening, try to like capture some moments of like me out on a hike, or the natural flora and fauna, and just to kind of give a little taste of what that harp therapy feels like. But yeah, I was thinking of adding it on to my coaching sessions, maybe at the end or something as a, like, I haven't worked that out completely yet, so we'll see how that goes. But
Yeah, or the beginning of a coaching session.
Mhm.
I'm thinking if I had a coach that would play the harp at the beginning of every session, that would, especially a person who lives with chronic pain, just kind of
yeah,
bring everything down a little bit. So,
I love that idea. I was thinking of to the end, but I actually really like the beginning. That's a good idea. Thank you, Kendy.
mhm.
Yeah, it's just one of those, that's just another parasympathetic,
Right.
tool that we have. Breathing is one, and I love the idea of music. You're giving me some ideas. I wish I played the harp. Maybe I should bust my guitar out or something. Although
Yeah.
that might put people into a state of fight or flight. Yeah, it's been a while.
And I definitely don't want to do that because I played the drums. So I definitely don't want to bust that out. So, you could even pair that with some guided breathing, or have your client really work on just concentrating on their breath while you're playing. That's gorgeous.
Yeah, that's a great idea. There's so many things you can do. It's,
Mhm.
it's endless. So
There's something about that instrument that just brings you into the moment. It's hard to pay attention to anything else when you were playing just now. It's really an immersive type of experience.
it is. It is. And it's interesting. There are times when it was painful for some people that I was playing for them to be in that moment. And they had to get up and remove themselves because whatever was being brought up, they could not deny. I think I was feeling, and it was just like it was too much for them. So it's interesting. It's like everybody's at a different level of where they are in terms of like accepting that or not. So it's all about meeting the person where they're at. There was one individual I remember playing for. It was in a waiting room. So it was really hard because when you're in a waiting room, you can't really individualize to one person. So I was just generically playing, just like you heard back there. But this poor woman was in so much pain, active pain, and she was in a wheelchair that I could tell that my playing was not matching that of her pain. And so it was actually making it worse for her. And eventually she had to be wheeled out and removed from the waiting room, which I felt, of course, awful about, but I could sense that. And I think knowing that as a coach or a healer, or knowing that is a mismatch is very important. And a lot of that is intuitive. So yeah, it's very interesting to learn that, like, it doesn't always solve everything. Sometimes, it's not what's needed. Sometimes we have to mimic the way a child cries, or, that person's pain on that level so they can be heard. I worked on an orthopedic floor, and if I played too fast, for these patients that were walking by in a very slow manner because, they've had their surgery or they're learning to walk again, that would be like an injustice to them. And so I learned to match their pace, and it feels so right. They feel acknowledged, they feel heard, they feel probably supported, oh, and I don't even know if they notice, maybe they're not even aware, but that's my job, is to provide that support. And that's just how you can do that on a musical, what is the word I'm looking for? A musical way, standpoint, whatever. So,
That's super fascinating. So you made me think of a couple things there, Becky. I mean, we all know if I say the term elevator music, we all know what that means, right? And I was thinking about how movie directors utilize music to change intensity. So when you were talking about these people on the orthopedic floor, maybe they can just walk slowly. I mean, I can feel how a fast paced piece of music is going to not keep them in that parasympathetic state, right? It's going to make them feel like they're not going fast enough. They're not doing
Right.
enough. They're not measuring up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Super cool. You know, a
Yeah.
couple of times you've mentioned your YouTube channel, but tell us a little bit about the focus of your YouTube channel.
Yeah. So, it's always expanding and growing, but I want to bring the coaching and the music together, along with my understanding of trauma and my living through it and my own understanding of chronic pain. It's just like, wouldn't you want a coach that has been through something, and they really get it. I mean, they really get it. And not only that, but they've tried A, B, or C, or D, and maybe it's worked for them or whatnot. They've got stories, they've got experience, they're connected with these tools on how to, manage pain and to heal and everything. So I want to bring all of that together. And, I think naturally what falls in line with just doing those two things, healing, is just a higher connection with yourself. With, if you believe in a higher power or whatever it is, if it's just even deeper intuition or living your best self, I want to bring that in as well. So it's like, that's where I think it's like harp strings. You've got the harp strings, the wings part comes in, the higher part, the coaching part, the feeling free, like breaking free from the pain, So that's kind of where I want to bring it all into. The thing with me though, is I like to get into a lot of different things. So I have to be very careful of doing too much.
Yeah, right back to the word that Paul has mentioned a couple times now, transformation. That's what I was hearing, even with your description of harp strings and wings, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's all about transformation.
Transformation, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you need some help with trying to figure out what to do with the mess that you feel like you have, the pain, the trauma, the whatever it is, how do you work through that? How do you get through that? And I think the biggest part of I learned at TCC, honestly, is, and with IHTP, the harp therapy, was learning to just create a space for the person and not necessarily come bombarding in there and being like, you need to do A, B, C, and D. Of course, I learned that was not what to do. And to be more like create that healing space for things to come up and to be a sounding board and to reflect and all of those things that we're taught in coaching. And to see the real magic of that and to hear it work, it's amazing to me. So why wouldn't I want to be a part of that? I'd be like honored, as part of your healing journey,
Absolutely. Well, this has been a really fun conversation, Becky. Is there anything you want to close with, and where can folks get a hold of you and talk to you?
Yeah. So we covered so much, even more than I thought we would. So this is great. So Harp Strings and Wings, I have a website, a YouTube channel. It's either under Harp Strings and Wings or Becky Wertz, my name. And I have an Instagram and a Facebook. And I'm going to try to post more videos. Again, now that I have the time to dedicate to this, I really want, that to be more of a thing and to be able to reach people. And again, being more active on Instagram and just getting everything started and built up. And so I'm really kind of like at the beginning, but yet I've come so far. I guess you could say.
Yeah, I've definitely watched some of your videos, and you tend to go deep. That's what I really appreciate. And in this conversation, we went really deep too. It's not just, kind of surface level. Here's what you do to get well. It's like a, kind of an in-depth look at what it, the things that you're curious about right now. And I think when we can channel that curiosity, it's amazing what, what blossoms out of that. So really encourage people to check out Becky's YouTube channel, and there's some very fun videos on there. So
yeah, thank you.
Becky,
Thank you guys so much.
We are honored to have you with us today.
Aww.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Again, it's always so good to talk with you. It feels like kindred spirits. So
absolutely.
Exactly.
Well, thanks, Becky.
Thank you.